The good thing about life is that you can actually always optimistically look forward to a future which appears better than the future today. So next Monday, when we shoot forward a week, the election will be over. A result will be known, and we will already, good parts of us, be moving on. I'm sure a similar thought prevails for our next guest, who must be looking forward to next Monday thinking, at least I'll be having a lion. She joins us now, Labour MP for Tairi and our regular columnist and correspondent, Ingrid Leary. Good morning to you. You'll be thrilled when it's all over, won't you?
I think me and many others, Michael.
Yes. I was in Oamaru taking my son Theo down to boarding school, and there were a whole series of Labour people holding the signs up. And I thought, there they were doing, what you do. Have you been doing that as well, holding the signs up on street corners and stuff like that?
Certainly have. Just came back from that. So we did a couple this morning. We've done some last week, and we'll be doing it every day, morning and evening.
They had on some of the signs, toot your support. And I have to be honest with you, they were not getting a lot of toots as I was watching. What's the response been like for yourself?
Well, I'm lucky enough to live in the Socialist Republic of Labour and Society. We get plenty of toots and plenty of waves, but we don't take anything for granted.
Actually, that segues very nicely into my next question, because you were being used last week as basically a fetish decoy by the National Party to condemn Labour in general, to do with your thoughts on wealth tax. Did somebody ring you up and say, shut up, Ingrid?
No, and I thought their politics were quite desperate, actually. It was a very long bow to draw, and I said it to Radio New Zealand, what a load of rubbish to draw long bows like that. That just shows the desperation of the National Party. Except
your party leader then came out and basically slapped you down publicly, Ingrid. Did you, and said, this isn't party policy. Did he have to do that?
No, I made it very clear when I spoke at the Candidates Forum that it wasn't party policy, that it was a personal opinion, and that I absolutely back my leader. Everybody knows that. It's an old story. I'm not going to go into it again. If anyone wants to know my views or what happened, they can look back on the media. But I saw him say that absolutely what I had said was correct, that it is not our party policy, that I had expressed a personal view. I'd made that very clear. I'd made my support for him very clear, and the beat-up was a load of rubbish.
Well, to be honest with you, it was old news, as you're quite rightly saying, because you stated that on this program 6 months ago and you've been consistent about it. Aren't you allowed to have a personal view in politics? I thought that was the whole point of having a democracy, wasn't it?
Look, my view is that when you're as public as I have been about saying what my views were, to turn around and suddenly be very quiet or pretend to have a different view would be absolutely disingenuous. It's not my style of politics. I made it very clear on the evening that the reason that I was open about my public view was because I have, been publicly saying that my whole time in politics. It would just be crazy to change it. As I say, it was a beat up by the National Party and desperate politics.
But it's been a feature of both parties that they have been running negative campaigns against each other. And certainly is a very negative campaign you guys are running at the moment to do with the cuts that the National, you say, will inflict upon New Zealand. Is negative campaign works? Is that why both parties are doing it?
I don't actually think our campaign is negative, and you may disagree with me, but to point out that the maths is inadequate has never been shown, the numbers have not been shown, and that their whole platform relies on enticing tax cuts which have never been numerated adequately, and then they've said, we knew all along only 3,000 people would get the full benefit of the $250. I don't think that's negative. I think that's about dispelling misinformation, and as Grant Robertson characterised it, a scam.
Oh yeah, I don't think I agree with you, because you could go that tax calculator. I think I did. I don't know if you have, Ingrid. You might have done as well. And it does tell you how much money you're going to be getting if you put your household money in there. And I wasn't getting $250 a fortnight.
But how many people are going to do that? And how often was that word $250 touted, and the word average family? There was no qualification in what was said. Occasionally there was by some national people, but certainly we saw on the TV news enough clips to show that they were misleadingly suggesting that everybody was about to get in the order of that 250. Now, that's just not honest.
Okay, all right. No, it's fair enough, and you're allowed to do that. But I guess I am asking the question as this week goes through, is Labor standing on its record, Ingrid, or is it standing on the basis that the other side's worse?
Oh, look, voters need to make those decisions, and what we are doing is pointing out where there is misinformation. We're also pointing out the reality, the chaotic reality of what would happen if Winston Peters and his party had to get in. That is the likely scenario at the moment, and voters need to be, mindful of what it would look like to have an absolutely chaotic coalition where people can barely be in the same room as each other, let alone make rational decisions for the greater good of New Zealand.
Okay, I want to take you down that line of reasoning. You're saying that if on election night, let's just say the latest poll was replicated, just for argument's sake, which is,
Which one, Michael? There's been so many and they're all slightly different.
No, but they all say the same thing, and that is that Labor won't be the government this time next week, to be fair. But having said that, if this poll was replicated, let's say those polls were replicated saying that, Ingrid, and New Zealand First is sitting there on election night and National Act need them to form a government, a majority government, are you saying that that's a bad thing because David Seymour hates Winston Peters and vice versa, or it's a bad thing because Winston Peters and New Zealand First are a bad bunch of people?
I don't want to get myself into trouble here because I know how litigious Mr. Peters is. I think there's a couple of things. First, they don't see eye to eye on policy or personality, the three parties. And secondly, the New Zealand First that Labor went into coalition with proved to be problematic, but was a different party than it is now. It really does seem to be leaning in a different direction with much more inflammatory type of criticism, with polarising statements about race relations in New Zealand. I've been going to candidate meetings where I had not heard any sort of concrete policies coming from him, and then there was a terrible interview with Winston Peters on Q&A, which was just an attack of a journalist, with Winston Peters unable to show any numbers, justify any policies, or even speak to what his platform was. That's what New Zealand has got to bear in mind if it wants New Zealand First to be the kingmaker.
So are you saying to me, Ingrid, that Winston Peters in 2023 is a different beast than Winston Peters in 2017, who actually joined with Jacinda Ardern and made what I thought was a reasonably stable government from the years 2017 to 2020?
Look, voters will have to make that judgment from everything I've seen in those interviews and also the policies of the candidates who have been campaigning. I think there is a difference. I know that from the colleagues I've spoken to, because I wasn't in that coalition government, the colleagues I've spoken to found it very difficult. I think it would be significantly more difficult this time round. You can just tell by the rhetoric and the conduct of that party.
But listen, I've known Winston Peters for a long time, Ingrid. He's not saying anything in 2023 that he didn't say in 1987. So, I mean, his message about, separatism and racial division and people should be judged irrespective of their role and the influence of the treaty. Gosh, he's been consistent on that for, 36 years.
He's always attacked journalists too, but it just seemed to be at a different level. And it seemed to be much more out of defensiveness, in my view, because he couldn't answer some pretty simple questions, rather than as a tactic to get headlines. It just felt that he wasn't across the material that he should be as somebody with his experience. Now, they're campaigning on experience. I don't think it was a very good show.